So my topic is game design and free-to-play today. So I'm going to talk about how the free-to-play impacts and should impact game design. And overall, I will spend some time talking about the free-to-play and what it means. I maybe should say a few disclaimers. One is that I'm going to mostly talk about games as a business, as this is about business. So I'm not going to so much talk about like these artistic projects or something like that, which are really cool. So this is more about like making at least some money with games. Also, most of my examples are from mobile space maybe, but it doesn't mean that I will only talk about that. But if you have some comments like how this translates to something else, please ask. And if you have any other comments at any time, please do ask. All right. So who am I? I started actually as a physicist. So I have a particle physics background, and I made this career change at some point, started to do games. That's one of my other passions. And my game passion started with the board games. Okay, I've been playing games with all my life, but actually as a designer, I first did a lot of board games and still do. It's kind of like my extended hobby. And as a designer, I like to do different kind of games, from party games to family games to complex strategy games, whatever. So I love all kinds of games. But that's just something from my background. These are my board games I've been designing, and as you see, they range from family games, children's games, to galactic civilization building games. As a digital designer, I've been more than 2 years in Supercell as a game designer, and I was in the Heyday team, original Heyday team, and now also in our new game, Boom Beach, which is in beta. I've been also working with that. So, but that's my experience from the digital side. What are the topics for today? So first, like this general, how to say, we will think about a little bit what free-to-play means. It's good, bad, or simply ugly. And after that, we will go through the essentials of free-to-play, what it means. I heard that you had Lowell here, Nicholas Lowell, last time, which is really good. I will talk about a lot about his ideas, and I think he has some very, very good points. So I will come to that. Then think about what are the implications of free-to-play to game design, and finally I will give 5 tips what I think are maybe the most crucial tips when you do free-to-play games, what you should think about. All right, let's start. So if you have any questions at some point, please ask. So what do you think about free-to-play? There's been a lot of discussion about what we should think about it, and maybe some of you have been following the internet about this one game and all the buzz about it. So it's a Dungeon Keeper, a classic bullfrog game from 1997, and now they made this new free-to-play mobile version of it. It was released at the end of 2013 by EA, and it got the editor choice. So it was released on iOS and Android as a mobile game. It's editor choice, featured in iOS, and there was a lot of discussion, and still is a lot of discussion if you go to the blogs or whatever, and you can read a lot about this. Not so nice words. So I think this kind of I took this as a starting warm-up example. What I mean about the discussion about free-to-play. It's very controversial, and what people have very strong opinions about this whole thing. So let's dig a little bit about talk a little bit about that more first. So here are some responses from players who have actually played this game, and or reviewers, and what they think. So you can read a few comments from there. They are not so pretty to read. So it's not even a game. It's just a virtual beggar constantly demanding your spare change and offering nothing in return. EA has completely ruined this IP. It's absolute joke. Okay, and people use as a game in quotes. So yeah, many people were quite angry when this came up. And now we can think about like why. I think there are many interesting whys here, like why we got such a strong reaction from a community. It's a game after all. Why EA released as a free-to-play game, and why it was executed as it was. It's like as a free-to-play game, and like all the details and stuff like that. But I will go to these points later on, and we will like talk about more of these. But maybe this lecture will give some ideas like why some answers, hopefully. Okay, so now it's like a bit of this collection of observation how the world is changing at the moment and how it's been changing for some time already. This is pretty semi-old like a chart, but it gives a picture. So this is a US retail video game industry revenue during these from 2005 to 2012, and the 12 is not full completed here, but I couldn't find better chart. So anyways, you can see the revenue has been growing till 2008, and after that it's been declining. So even though like games have become a big thing, like the retail industry, so retail means that those games that you buy actually from the stores, it's been going down. But although there are like we could say there are more gaming than ever. On the other hand, this is old chart as well, but couldn't find anything better. This just shows you the US gamers, like how many of them there are. From 2008 to 2011, it's been increasing rapidly, and that growth, of course, has been continuing, although it gaps, of course, at some point. But so the gamers, like what we mean about gamers is of course new kind of gamers, not like Facebook gamers, mobile gamers, whatever, not just console gamers. But they are starting to be like a small percentage of all that we can think about as gamers. And this is kind of for a comparison, like what's the game audiences in the new world. So we have Grand Theft Aalto, which was super successful video game, sold over 30 million copies. And then we have games like Candy Crush Saga, which has been downloaded 500 million times. And this, for Angry Birds, there's some number which is more than 2 billion at the moment. Of course, it's all downloads altogether, but if you think about it, it's kind of like there's a big portion of the whole planet's population who has played Angry Birds. So it's quite huge that the games can, like, at this today, people can, how many people will play games today? And this is just one game, like one mobile game. This is a chart about global games market, how it's been moving. So it shows that there's, if you take a look at this, there's like for all these segments, the whole, like the total of this chunk is the whole revenue that is in the market, and you can see it's growing. This is like an expectation how it will grow. 2012 and 2013 are probably already like the real data, and you can see that the tablet and smartphone part is growing, and everything else is kind of stable or going down pretty much. But overall, the industry is growing a little bit. So 6.7% is I think the whole, like growth during each year. I think no, it's the whole thing, whatever. Yeah. Anyways, there's a small growth you can see here. Okay, so let's make some observation about all this. So the size of the potential game audience is really growing fast. But the potential in terms of revenue is not growing that fast, actually. It's growing quite slowly. And we can also say, if maybe not observation from here, but observation from other things, is that people's habits, how their games are bought and played and used, how people are using their, like, how they are behaving at their free time is changing rapidly as well. Yeah, you just go to the bus and see what people do. They have their smartphones that they use all the time, which can be annoying, right? Really annoying. All right. So, what are the main drivers for the change? All right, there are a few things, at least, that came into my mind. One is that the biggest one, I think, is the digital distribution of content that's been really like exploding. So it's free. So what I mean about distribution is that we don't go to the shops and buy those games anymore. We download them with different channels. We have different channels. It's same with the music, right? Okay, it's free. So what it means is that the game doesn't necessarily, or the content doesn't need to be free, but the distribution, the delivery of the content is free. There's no charge. You don't have to buy a truck and drive that truck to the store and unload the cargo and stuff like that. And it's instant. So it happens like snap. It's easy. What I mean by easy is that it's easy to, there are no like barriers, there are no gatekeepers. Whoever can go to the market actually and sell his own product through this digital distribution net. So what it means is that the market is becoming insanely crowded. So there's like, if you think about like some, even, okay, Steam as well, but like app stores and stuff like that, they are just full of games, full of new applications all the time. It's so easy to do it. Okay, the other big driver or disruption is the mobile. So people can now access their devices anywhere. Everybody has a gaming device. It's kind of like a different state that you buy this new device and go your home and sit on your couch and play it. And also, people are now using the new media differently. There's so much time, so much new stuff all the time, so little time. I have to check my news Facebook feed, and only a few major channels to find out new content. What I mean is that there are like, you can go to Google, you can go to App Store, you can go to Google Play Store, whatever, Steam, but you have these few places where you can buy all that digital content. So everything changes in this kind of market. And now, what it seems to be is that the traditional way to make games is facing great challenges in the new environment. And it's not just these changes, there's also different changes regarding the traditional way. So I will talk about what I mean with the traditional way a little bit. So traditional way of making games is basically that you make the best game you can, right? You go to the garage and code for 2 years, and then you come up with the best game ever. And then you release it, market it, hopefully a little bit, and then you hope that people will buy it from the stores. Of course, you need to have a distribution, whatever, but basically this is just like the crude way to do it. And what I mean with this, of course, okay, maybe they should say that it's like, no, people will buy it and you don't have to think about it. You will go to do the next game and so on. And of course, there's also other problems related to this traditional way of making games, which is that the games are becoming so big, so huge, you have to get so much money to make the games and stuff like that, if you think about AAA stuff. But that's kind of like a different thing. So, modern world problems regarding this is that there are a few, like some anonymous commentators said, how would I find your game? Why should I pay anything for your game as everything else is free? Why should I invest my time to your game? How can I know beforehand, is it worth it? So you have to kind of face these questions now. Maybe like years ago, you just read your review, favorite review on the newspaper or whatever, and then you had only a few games where you chose from, and you kind of had to trust to the marketing thing, and you were ready to pay because there was no other option. Maybe download some free demo or something like that. But now your time is more contested, and it's really a different thing now. And we can think that not every business model has survived the disruptions in these kind of technologies. So if you think about like encyclopedias, no one makes encyclopedias anymore, right? There's no such business that's making books as encyclopedias, selling those. It's dead. Now we have a Wikipedia, which is great free encyclopedia that you can find from the net, and that's a great thing, right? But it still killed the old technology that was there. And music is going through a bit the same kind of change. Like, you don't do those, publishers still do those CDs, but I think they are facing their end at some point too. Everybody streams their music from the internet and so on. So we have to be ready that these kind of changes happen every now and then we can think about like what we do then. What's the thing? So I think, and many think the same way, is that most games need to adapt in order to cope with the new change. And free-to-play model, I think it should be seen as a reaction to the disruption in technology that we are facing. So it's not that it's what I want to emphasize is that it's not so that some people go to this evil place and they will think, hey, what should we do? Let's do free-to-play games and take all the money and whatever. It's not like that. It's kind of like a reaction to what's the change that's been happening all the time. Like how do we survive as a game makers in this new era, basically? Okay, any comments or questions at this point? All right, so let's go deeper to the free-to-play, what it means actually and how it should be understood. So the main idea is very simple, super simple. You offer the product for free instead of trying to get any money beforehand. And usually there are ways to spend money inside the game which are called in-app purchases. And but it's not even necessary actually, right? It can be free to play, just free game you put out. And note, like people talk about free to play games as it's kind of like own game genre itself, but that's not really the case. It's just a business model and a marketing model, and it has nothing to do with the game itself. Right? What are the benefits from free to play? Okay, it's free, so first of all, there's only a small barrier to download the game, and that will mean that there's easier to find users and larger audience. So that's like very important. If you have two choices between you have a paid app and you have a free app, it's much easier, or paid game and free game, it's much easier to download the free one. And more the people are doing that, the even harder it's kind of like to find the guys that are willing to pay anything beforehand. That's just how the ecosystem is changing. Okay, biggest benefit of course is it is free to play, right? And it should be free to play. I will come to this later on, but there's basically no need to use money. That at least should be one of the benefits of this model. But also I think it's a reality, because like if you look at a typical free to play game, that's, by the way, if I write somewhere F2P, it's free to play, right? Okay, so 90 to 95% of people never pay anything in a free to play game. That's kind of like a rough, of course it can change from game to game, but that's kind of the rough figure. All right, some typical free to play characteristics, like how it's not that it should be only one kind of game, but usually you can find these kind of characteristics in the free to play games. And I will ask you also why is this so, but it has usually free to play games are endless. Like it's one of those core, not necessarily each time, but usually. Good. Is there someone who would like to answer this? Why is this so? Why free to play games are usually endless? There's no definite end to it. Any ideas? Yes. So the answer was that if you stop playing, you cannot pay anymore. So that is true. Like because and that's basically the answer. Because you don't pay, get any money when the guy installs your game. It's like all the time he has a potential to do these purchases. So you want to have him as long as playing as possible. Okay, easy to start and play. And why is that important? Of course, it's that. You can think of this as kind of like a funnel, right? You have these players who start playing the game, and they will go to the game, and like if there's it's very difficult, like the tutorial is super difficult or whatever. There's a great challenge in the first minutes. You cut all those potential players. They stop playing and never come back to your game. So that's why it's usually so that free-to-play games have like a very easy start, so they wouldn't drop anyone. Of course, and I think it's a wise thing, and I think that's one of the benefits that free-to-play can bring on. So you don't have to read this 300-page long manual before you can actually like play the game. That's kind of like the old way. It's good that there's a lot of effort put in the first minutes, like first seconds, because it emphasizes like what is the most important thing and teaches you to play. So mostly I think it's a good thing. Gameplay has typically some friction and sessions are somehow limited. And what it means sometimes it's like energy timers or some other mechanics. And okay, now I want to ask a question again. Why is that so? Why do you think so? Is this the case? Why gameplay has friction in free-to-play games usually? Yeah.
Well, that's at least where you can put the paywalls.
Yeah. So one answer is that that's where you can put the paywall. Any other ideas? Yes.
You can stop the player's gaming session before he gets bored.
Yes. Those are the two things I'm looking for. Yes, exactly. So player can stop the play session before he gets bored. So usually we are like as people, we are such creatures that we consume something until we are over full of it, right? We don't know when to stop. So, and then we never come back. We eat the whole cake and think that, we ate too much. And that's kind of like the basic idea is that if you restrict that no one can play too much with one session, you kind of like play this safeguard. Then people will come back more often. But also, of course, that's the good, like natural point to put the paywall. So paywall, I think it's a bad, but like the potential to player to pay something. Okay. Also, free-to-play games usually they are like built in different way than normal games or like traditional games. Or some traditional games are built this way as well. But I think this is one of the characteristics that there's kind of like a strong core loop, which is something very simple that you do many times. And then you have this meta gameplay layer. And it kind of like puts this whole thing together. So your one session can be going through the loop a few times. But there's like a bigger progression behind all of it, which gives you this like meaning for the game and kind of like ties those small atoms together in this one story. And I personally actually usually like this kind of structure. And of course you can see it in all classics as well, but I think you can many times spot it from free-to-play games especially. All right, so it's free, but how do you then make the money, right? And this is something that Lowell probably talked to you about last time. So I think the very important concept is the curve behind it. So this is kind of like the traditional way to see business. Is this kind of that you pick a price for the product? Of course, you know it better than I do, but I will tell you about it anyways. So you have this traditional way to do business, which is that there's a fixed price point that you choose, and there's people. So in the x-axis, there's a demand. So what it means is how many people are willing to buy the product, and price means that what you pick for the price. So if you pick a high price, you are on this blue line somewhere on the left corner. It will mean that the demand is small. So there's only few people that are willing to buy this product. And if you draw this kind of rectangle here, you will see that the area is the revenue. So the number of people willing to buy it and the price for it will give you the total revenue of your business. And now you can try to pick the optimal point for the price in order to maximize the area of this not square, but thing. Okay. Yeah, nothing wrong with that. But and this is from actually Lowell's blog Games Brief. It's just very good blog to read if you like his ideas. So music industry had this like a fixed album price, and you can think that there are, especially in the music industry, some people that are really like could pay a lot more for the artist, and some who would listen to it much like would like to listen it, but are not ready to buy the album, right? So it's a good example of this kind of like how this fixed price maybe is not the best option. And of course, always the curve doesn't need to be a straight line going down, but it could be something else. But the free-to-play business idea is that you have the curve, which is this kind of like a curve, and you can think that you have the super fans, which are the real fanboys of your product that are willing to put a lot of money in the game. Then you have the medium payers and free riders, which are not willing to pay anything, but they want to still play your game. And most of your users are that kind of people. But what is the idea is that like the revenue you get from this one is the whole, like the lower part of this curve. So you can get something from everybody. And that's kind of like instead of having this fixed price, which will cut out a lot of your potential users who are not willing to pay that money. And also you are cutting out the people who would pay even more, right? But the curve idea is that you can get from everybody something that is kind of like suited for their tastes, like how they feel they should be doing. And if this works out nicely, I think it's a good thing for everybody. If it works out nicely, of course. It doesn't need to, but people can invest how much they want. There's no like a definite point that what's the right amount you can invest to this one. Do you have any questions, or was this something that Lowell already told you everything about? Maybe probably better than I did. But I think this is an important concept, like, and it's behind all these, like this whole free-to-play thing, quite a bit. And you can see this is just statistics, like how the app price has been. What's kind of like a distribution of different kind of apps in the App Store, or yeah, this is from the iOS store, and it's super high. Like the free, almost all of the stuff is free, and it's increasingly even so. So in 2013, the 90% of all apps in the App Store were free. And if you think about making something else than free, you are like in really small crowd and really crowded crowd as well. So it's very difficult to fight for that territory and get those downloads and people interested. So this is just a change which is happening, and you can fight against it, but it's kind of like difficult, I would say. And this is just to show the kind of like how the curve works in practice. So you can see that there's a number on the left-hand side. There's a number of transactions, and the green one is the under $10 transaction done in the apps as in-app purchases, and the second one is 10 to 20%, $20 price point, like in-app purchases, and the last one is over $20 in-app purchases. And you can see that only 13% of all of those in-app purchases are over $20, but they still create over half of the revenue of all of those in-app purchases. So this is kind of like how the curve, how you can see it in practice, that people like those small, big purchases will give you quite like large sums of money in the end. And Kickstarter is a good example of this kind of behavior as well. So there are some people who are backing a lot of money to these games or products and whatever, and some are only backing a little bit, but that's okay. Everyone can do what they want. You try to find those like balances that everybody can find a good spot for themselves. And why this hasn't been done before, why it's now we can see this in games so often and Kickstarter and whatever. And I think it's the digital revolution that is really, this doesn't work that well if you go to a brick or mortar store and buy something like, or buy your groceries or whatever. It doesn't work in that way. But when you have digital distribution, you have like you are doing only to the customer, like one-to-one sale to the customer. You can do this kind of like a customization. It's kind of like a generalization of this customized thing that everybody can express themselves, do what they want, and it's different for each people. So it's only now possible to do this, even though this concept is probably older than what we are seeing now. Okay. Okay, now I already talked about a lot of like the good things for the free-to-play, but now I will talk about the challenges for the free-to-play, like the dark side of free-to-play, if you like. So, because it's only small investment to start the game, people will quit easily. So, and that's of course the reason why these free-to-play games have so much emphasis on the start of the game and on the tutorial and stuff like that. Free-to-play game tries to minimize this loss, but it's of course there's no investment, so it's very easy to drop to play the game. And of course, also one like a difficulty is to make compelling in-app purchases in order to going too much this pay-to-win direction. So it's difficult to find a balance in that way. And also this friction that is created to the game, it can boost monetization, but the game experience can be worsened because of this. And it's all needs to be in fine balance. And of course, there's always this kind of like a you cannot do it all, but if it's done well, I don't think it needs to hurt the gameplay actually, like the monetization part. It can feel good too if it's done right, but usually it's done very horrible. So that's why it feels so bad. But I think what's the fundamental biggest problem for free-to-play game is this one, is that, and why we get that rage, is that most of the known game types or genres do not naturally support the free-to-play structure. So it doesn't fit them all that well. And it's kind of like a bad situation because like it's the only thing that actually is this at this moment looks like a promising direction. And it seems that not all of the old game genres or game types they just don't fit this structure so well. And that's why you get these like, let's say, well, I will come back to this later. Do you have any question about this one, like what I mean here?
Yeah, do you have examples of what types of genres?
Dungeon Keeper. No, okay, genres, yes. This one, okay, this is maybe shows a bit more what I mean. Okay, this is actually quite bad, like example, but just to give you some like proof of this concept, is that there's like the chance you make an in-app purchase made in like a game genres. So this is game genre definition in App Store or whatever Android is really vague, and people like genres. It doesn't really that matter. If it's a strategy game, it can be almost anything. But there's at least some like there's some common thing in those games still. Or if you take an arcade game, it's probably something that is close to arcade game, right? But it doesn't mean that it's exactly this kind of game. But still you can see this kind of pattern that some game genres, they have a lot of bigger tendency players to make these in-app purchases, right? So to create money. These are free apps. So they have some possibility to make money. So if you made arcade or puzzle or educational game, there's a much lower chance that people will actually spend money in that. And this doesn't need to be meant to be so that only, okay, you should focus on here, but it just says you it's harder to make the free-to-play model work in some of these categories. Yes?
I've been looking at this research earlier and I was wondering, since it's from February last year, first, would you put Candy Crush into the public genre? How do you think it would be changed? Does that game monetize?
Yeah, maybe it does. I'm not actually sure like how it should be placed in here, and probably it will. And this will change, and it's not like to me that this will tell you where you should, what type of games you will have to make in order to make any money. But it just shows that in some genres, it's at least hasn't been found a way to make money. That's more. Maybe Candy Crush will crush this chart actually. So, yes. Any other comments? But what I mean, like with that, the free-to-play model doesn't fit all the game types. I don't necessarily only mean like how much they will make money. I just means that because the game usually has to be endless. I will come to this. It already crosses out all the games that are not endless, right? It's just against the free-to-play mode or way of thinking to have a definite end, and that's already like 99% of the games that we know. Basically, no, not really, but quite big part of the games that we know, they don't are really like suited perfectly for free-to-play games. And it's a big challenge. And I'm not saying it's easy to solve or anything like that. Yes.
Do you think it's always so possible to sort of add in this metagame layer on top of
Yes.
games, and or is that the only way to sort of make it possible?
Yeah. So is it possible to add like a metagame, or is it like the only way to add a metagame layer to this kind of game? That was the question. And I think it's a good way, and usually in many games it can be done like that, so that you have the old game, let's say arcade game or whatever, that you play once in a while, and then you add this metagame layer, and that's like it works quite nicely in many games, and I think that's like the best transition of some, let's say, arcade game or games, or the best way to modify them in order to fit free-to-play genre. But it's not like it doesn't work in every case, but I think people will be also in future hopefully more innovative and come up with new ways like how to do it, but it's a challenge. Okay, so let's come back to why is everybody so angry again. All right, so traditional model doesn't seem to work anymore. I'm not saying it's working not every case, but it has more challenges to beat. There will be some paid apps in the future, paid games, different things that will break this kind of. There are always some people that are willing to do differently, but this is like the major direction where everything is changing. Okay, and also like the unfortunate thing is that most of the free-to-play models seem to make money, as only certain types of free-to-play models seem to make money, and most fail miserably. So it's not like an instant success if you make a free-to-play game. Well, it's full of those games, but it's you have to just find like the business model that works in that game. And what's kind of like the most horrifying thing in all this, if I say these dark words, no, is that the games that succeed, they kind of set the level for the ecosystem where the games live. So success drives the advertising costs and creates even more challenges for the less successful games. So if you want to compete with those successful games, you have to kind of like fight against them to find the room for your game. And this has the unfortunate thing that it pushes all the games to the same kind of free-to-play format. Although there could be different ways to do free-to-play, but this gives the direction that everything it doesn't have to be, but it's more easy to do the same old stuff and try to fit this same kind of business model that has been proven to every kind of games, right? Which probably isn't the best idea. Yes.
So when you say certain types of free-to-play models don't make money or make money, what do you mean by free-to-play model?
Okay, yes, I should be more specific. It's a good question. So what I mean about free-to-play model, if I say that some free-to-play models doesn't work that well and some do. So what I mean about that is that where you can think like, so there's a few like successful ones, if I think about those because it's more easier. Let's say you have this normal wait time. You have a resource management game where you wait and then you can speed it up using diamonds. Like that would I call a free-to-play, well, model is bad thing. Like a free-to-play mechanic that brings revenue and also like energy mechanics you have in some old Facebook games or many other games that you have these few rounds that you can do like energy, and after you do this action you lose the energy and which regenerates slowly. Those are the things that kind of like proven to work. So they are like copied to every game, these same mechanics, even though they wouldn't fit that well, but only because they are proven and they seem to make money in some other games, they are like done over and over again. And I think it's not stupid, it's something that, yes, it has to be done if there's no other choice, right? But maybe there are some new ways to do this as well.
Give an example
model that doesn't make money. Well, if that's tricky. nothing comes to my head. There sure are many examples of games that don't make any money. I don't think there's any big like a group of model that, or like a thing that doesn't work that well and it's copied over and over again because it doesn't make sense, right? If something doesn't work out, not other players, no other game developers won't copy it and do it again, right?
So it's the context that makes it
Yeah, basically. So but I mean, yes. So there are some cases where these models have been like trying to use in such games that doesn't really support the model, right? So there can be some games where you have this energy mechanic and it just feels wrong, right? Or you have this weighting thing and it just feels wrong, it doesn't fit the game, but it's still applied to all kind of games because it's proven in one game category. So that was maybe what I meant. Okay, and like if we now think about like the Dungeon Keeper example, I think it's a good example of this. That okay, we have this monetization scheme that's been done in many of these strategy games, and now when they thought about like okay, let's do a Dungeon Keeper sequel on iOS. So what should we do? Should we go as a paid app or should we go as a free-to-play game? And if we do, like how do we implement the free-to-play? And then they pick this way to monetize, which is done in many games, and it just doesn't feel right for that game. And also, of course, there's that. I think in that case, maybe they should have went with the paid app because they had the old legacy, they had all that. They could have had some instance only because of that, and just do a game that is close to the original one, and maybe it would have worked out. It has worked out quite okay with, let's say, UFO or some other iPad games. And stuff like that. Minecraft or whatever. Okay, is someone already talk about the LTV CPI stuff for you guys? Does it sound at all? Little bit, okay. So I think this is a very important concept if you are making games to understand. And what I mean have integral here. You don't have to think about it, but it's just one way to define it. Okay, LTV. So what it means, it's a very important concept. It's lifetime value. So it means that each player, when they start the game, they have a potential to make you some money. And that's called the lifetime value of average user. And this is fundamentally the most important metric if you have. And but it's very difficult to measure, and that's why you don't hear about that so much. But it's basically just like a combination of ARPDAU and retention. So it's actually, if you think about it, it's kind of like each day each player has a chance to make money, and the chance the player to be here is the multiplier for that to the making of money. So you just sum each day, like the chance the guy is still playing and the number he makes, how much he makes money each day. So sum of the product of revenue and ARPDAU for his future. And why is it important? Is that because you have also if you try to get players to play your game, you have few ways to do it, right? One way is just to put it to the store or release it, whatever is your way, and just sit there and don't do anything. But it's very difficult for players to find your game. Of course, you can try to create a buzz in the media, social media channels, or send a review code for your best reviewer. But if there's I don't know, many thousands of apps submitted each day, or it's crazy number how many games come out each day. There's no chance that some random reviewer has time to go through them all. So you have to have some special way how you can kind of get some attention to your game. And usually, of course, Apple can feature some games and does so. And in Finland, it's been very, very nice to see these very good games being promoted by Apple. But it doesn't happen each time. It doesn't happen to each country, to each developer. So it's not something that I would kind of too much give that you can count on it, that it will happen, that if you make a quality, if you make really quality game, I think you can maybe count that And if you have the contacts, you can kind of like almost be quite certain that it will get like promoted by Apple or some other channel. But it's not very wise to count on that really if you are making any business. So one way to find your product is that you do these advertisements. So banner ads, video ads, Facebook ads, whatever, or cross promotions with some other things. And like all ads, they cost money, right? And I think this ad network system is really interesting, kind of like different than the traditional ways, because you can really count like how much you need to put money on the table in order to get someone to download your thing. Yes.
You mentioned video ads.
Yes.
How big is this user-generated gameplay video thing? I think Amplifier is trying to promote that.
Yeah, Everplay. Or
Do you have any experience?
I have no experience on that, so I don't know. I guess it's quite big. So those kind of like viral ways to spread the game, yeah, it can be probably done in some cases. But it's tough. It's not easy because of course that channel will get also filled with stuff as well. So it's kind of like there's so much competition. So yeah, the virality. So it's kind of like sometimes you talk about K factor. So it's kind of like how if you think viruses, they will spread from one person to one person. So the games can spread that way as well if they have a high K factor. And so you can have these Flappy Bird kind of scenarios, right? Everybody knows that. If not, shame on you. But it's very rare, right? And even in that case, you can think that is it really a success story after all. So what you usually do is that you try to place ads, get people to play your game, and if you have such thing that each user you get to your game, you get more money out of it than the cost per install. It's a pretty good thing, right? You can just place ads and get people to play your game, and they will bring more revenue. And that's kind of the things how you scale up the system. But the problem is the CPI is super expensive at the moment, and there's no kind of like I don't think it will go down that much in the future as well. And Superdata, which is this kind of like a firm that does this, I don't know. Well, anyway, they have some data which they estimate that cost per install, I think in 2013 for mobile games was on average $2.73. And also they made this comparison like what's the average revenue per user, and it was less than that. So there are, yeah. So apparently some are not even getting the money back from these ads. So it's kind of like a tough game if you want to go to this advertisement route. You have to really have a good LTV for your game. So what it means that if you make a free-to-play game, well, let's say if you think about you have an app that costs 99 cents. You put it out. If you want to find a user by advertisement, you have to spend $2.73 for get at least one download for your game. And that's for the free games, right, or free apps. And this price is much higher for the paid apps because there's a bigger barrier to download it. So if you think about it, there's very, very little you can actually do if you want to be in the free-to-play type of business and make money, not lose money. And that's just the only way is basically to guarantee is to have a high LTV for your game. Then you can make advertisements, and then you can bring users to your game. Yes?
So what kind of LTV should you be looking for? Not
Over 2.73.
What's the LTV of your games?
Over 2.73, right?
But I mean, what would it be in, for example, the top 10 grossing? What's your estimation?
No, I haven't given any numbers, but of course, it depends on the game genre as well. Like this cost per install, I think it depends quite a bit on the team, and some games are just easier to find, to place ad and find people to download. So like if you make a horror game for kids, I don't know, not too many people will probably download it because it doesn't just fit there. There's no one there. So yeah, it depends. I haven't, but I mean, in order to business to make sense, this just has to be higher than what's the cost per install. And of course, you have to kind of find it out for your game, like what's the cost per install. Yes.
How do you know what's your LTV?
You don't in the beforehand. You have to kind of like, after a while, you need to make an estimate for it. And that's why it's so bad, the metric, and that's why nobody talks about it, because you don't really know it until you have the retention and like ARPDAU, which is the average revenue per daily active users. So you have to know those numbers, and then you have to crunch some number. You have to basically calculate the integral for what I have to know it. And you cannot know it beforehand. You can only know it like afterwards. So, but you can, after a while, you can of course make these estimates. Like, okay, I see these numbers. I can predict this kind of pattern in the behavior. So I can make an estimate for my LTV, right? Yes. Yeah. So the question is, how do you know your LTV? This is the kind of like the how the thing is changing and the kind of the historical data. There are no like this is just scaled numbers. So it starts from 100 in 2013 January, and it just shows the scale. And the orange one is cost per install, and mobile ARPU, which is the average revenue per user, it's on the lower line. So it actually shows that even though the average revenue per user hasn't grown that much, the cost per install has grown quite a bit. And of course, some part of it's just the Christmas part, but there's also like a real tendency that this goes up and not down. Okay, so why I talk about this is that because I think this has some implications for the free-to-play design as well. It's not just you can screw these things and don't think about this. You have to think about this if you try to make a product actually. And now we will go there. Like, what are the implications? So first of all, let us go through this kind of like a exercise that if we think about all games, and we have good games in one corner, because most of the games are not so good after all, right? Then you have free-to-play games. It's a different kind of like a part of the game space. And there's a cross-section, I think, between good games. But you also, for the free-to-play games, you have free-to-play games that actually make money. And now if you make a game, now you can think where you want to sit, right? It's here, in the middle of everything, right? But it's quite small space. Hard to hit that target. Okay. So if you think about, go back to the traditional game design, how it worked out is that you can start from these three pillars. So I just joke and call it the holy trinity of traditional game design. But I think this actually applies to every game you make. It's kind of like you have to pick the audience, you have to pick the team, you have to pick the mechanics, and they all need to fit together. So if you're making a game about dolls, it probably shouldn't be for the 35-year-old male, like the audience. So maybe it's kids. Okay, what kind of mechanics work with dolls? Okay, some nice things, I don't know. So you have to kind of tie all these together in order to make a good package. And you can start from any of these three corners and like go find your way. But the biggest challenge, if you now think about free-to-play game design, is that the game designer must also think about the monetization. Or, okay, it doesn't necessarily, maybe it should be just a designing team. It doesn't need that all teams need to have a game designer. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that whoever does the design has to think about the monetization. It's not just something that you externalize. So now you have, instead of these three things, you have actually this kind of like a four-pillar system, quadrinity of free-to-play game design. So in order you have to tie the mechanics, monetization, and audience together. So if you're making a kids game, maybe some of those aggressive in-app purchases are not the best way to do it, and whatever. Okay, this is I shouldn't say this, but like the traditional solution to this problem is that you hire a lot of product managers, right? And I know you have had some product managers here, and I don't have anything bad to say against them. Like, but I just like I don't like this idea, and that's why I bring it up. That you kind of like you externalize the monetization part. Like it's kind of something that can be cut out. You have this game, and then you say after the game is done, how do we make money with this one? And then you bring up some ways to monetize. And I don't think this thing will work that well, or has worked out that well so in the past. So I know in some cases product management can be a very good thing, but like overall, I don't think this is the way to solve the problem. To make this kind of model that can be. This is just my personal. This is nothing like my company statement or anything like. This is just my opinion about it. So my solution is that game designers just need to get better and handle it all. Right? There's no other choice, in my mind. Yes.
In a previous lecture, I think it was Touko who spoke about distinguishing designing the core loop and then the visual side. So that you said that there's a trap that you might fall in love with some features or design. And you mentioned also how important it is that the core loop is really, really great, amazing, and addicting. So how do you actually handle that process when you develop games? That when is the right time to start like working on the graphics, and when do you know that you have a good core loop?
Oh yeah. Okay. So when you know when you have a good core loop, and how do you go on there? I don't know. There's no one method to find out. I think you just, if you do something and then it feels good, I think then maybe you have it, and then some other people like it as well. So I guess that's the point. But it's true. It's very. I mean, all these things. It's very difficult, and that's why it's so hard to make a good game that will work out.
Well, in what kind of stage was the heyday when you figured out that this is going to be a great game?
Well, actually, in that case, so heyday case, it was like kind of like we made the core loop, and when we tried out, and it was fun, and then we didn't have all the meta layers there, or like all the like how it will progress. We just have very simple game where you place the fields and cut down the crops and whatever, and it was fun to do. So then we know that okay, most probably we have something nice here because people just like to do the basic thing over and over again, even though there's no bigger meta layer. But usually that's a good way to loop this game is that you make a really good core loop, and then you kind of like that's where you build the meta game. So I think that usually works quite nicely with these kind of games, but not with all games, but with some games. Okay, any other comments?
I was thinking about you have these different portions of the game, if you will. For example, you have the actual core loop, then you have the meta game, then you have different, like we were talking about friction, for example.
Yeah.
So can you somehow like identify what of those is generating the most revenue? Like, is it like take Heyday, for example, or some other game?
Yeah.
Is it the need of the players to overcome the friction by sort of speeding up the game, or is it some kind of special offers that are made in the game, or is it simply just something to do with the actual core loop of the game?
So what's I guess the question is that question was that what's the like the real thing that generates the revenue in a game, right? Like is the friction or is I think like how I would like to see it, I'm not sure if it's true, but how I would like to see it at least is that you make the game kind of like in one way, but then and it's completely free how you can play it there, right? So there's like the whole thing you can play for free, and that's the thing. And then you have these like customizations, or if you have to want to manage the time, like you don't like to wait that much, or you just want to unlock this bit faster, or kind of like it doesn't suit your play style at the moment, how I feel now. You have these possibilities like to tune the experience by using maybe money there, or some free diamonds or whatever. But it's kind of like you can kind of, each player can go to different directions, and this, if you can kind of like naturally get it feel so that you can really play the game as it is, but there's just like more customization, more specialization if I do these things, and that will give you the revenue. I think that's kind of like a nice way to, if you can make it that way, so that you don't force, there's no paywall, you cannot progress from this point on. It's just like, if I just want to do this now, I will have to pay, or there's other ways I can tackle this problem. It's kind of like a management of your personal resources and like how you manage the diamonds or premium currency or whatever, and those things I think. But it's all boils down to that people really have to like the game and be really invested in order to do those things. And I think that's so the revenue comes from the fact that people love the game and there's a potential to invest to the game financially. But if there's no love, there's no money. Right. Yes.
As a designer, what are your everyday tools to get better and handle monetization?
Handle monetization. So as a designer, what are my tools to better handle this monetization? I don't like to think that way. So like if I design a game, I don't want to, or we don't think that way, that okay, or maybe some do, but at least like how to optimize this and that monetization-wise. We just like create what feels natural and put there these possibilities like to invest money into the game, right? So you have to always keep those things, but it's not any like optimization. I don't optimize for making most money. Like it's not the thing that we do. We optimize the fun and gameplay and just have like of course the monetization comes like all the time next to it, but it just has to be there as and not has to be there, but has to fit there nicely. But it's not that we like optimize. I wouldn't say so. Yeah.
So how do you feel about using third-party solutions for analytics or?
Okay, analytics. Yes. Like yes. So analytics. I will talk about them a bit later. So maybe actually next. Yes, it's next. Okay. So yeah, metrics. They are a great tool. So metrics are a way to measure if the game is working or not, and retention, I think, is the key metric. So I will talk about it a bit more. But these are just like general ideas about the metric. So overall, I think like free-to-play games should be thought as a service, and it's never ready, and you can always improve it. And metrics are kind of like the way to improve it. Or no, sorry, not way to improve it, but way to show how you should maybe improve it. Like what are the weak points? But like my personal idea is that metrics should never dictate how you design. It can just like validate your thinking and reveal the weak points of the game. But I don't believe in this kind of thing, idea that yes, let's crunch the data and do the decision from there. It just like helps you to make those decisions, but still you have to think about, you cannot think it as like numbers or data points or whatever only. They can give you some hints how to make the game better. If you see no one from metrics, you can see that no one spends any money. Of course, that's a problem, right? For example, or that no one plays your game after the second day. That's a problem, and then you have to find a solution for that one. But it's not really that okay. There's one easy fix that you can see from the metrics. Okay, yeah, maybe you should add third day for the game, and of course you have the third day in the game already. So you have to find the solution by yourself then, usually, right? Or the team has to find the solution. How do you feel about, by the way, having a break now? Or I don't have that much stuff. We can go it through and have a break or at some point. Or are you up to listening longer now? Okay, let's continue then. All right, so retention. I think this is one of the key parts, like that really kind of like is the most important one of the. Of course, the monetization is important too, but this is the. If this doesn't work, then your game doesn't work basically. So retention measures how many % of the players return to the game after X days. So if I pick a day now, like someone starts to play now. What's the chance that he will come tomorrow? That's the 1 day retention. Okay, if a player starts the game now, what's the chance that he will come back on the 7th day? That's the 7 day retention. Okay, if a player picks a day now, downloads now, and what's the chance that he will open the application on the 13th day? And that's the 30-day retention. And these data points that you can get from the metrics, they show you how sticky the game is. What's the chance that player will actually come back to your game? And this is really important in the free-to-play game, because if no one comes back to your game, there's no if you think just money-wise, it's just like there's no chance that he will make any payments. So, okay, it sounds crude, but also it kind of gives you that how fun your game is, basically. I think this is the most nicest metric in that way, because if players play it every day, usually it means that they like your game actually. So.
What's the point of doing it exactly 30 days later?
No, well, those are just, it could be 25th or whatever, but those are just like if you have some numbers that you always check it one. So okay, yeah, why 30 days later? Maybe I should emphasize this is like average. So you calculate this for, if I calculate 30-day retention now, it will mean that I will check all the players that logged in today, and compare to the number of created accounts on the, I will compare the number of people that logged in on a 13th, on the 0th date, and now, those 30 days gap between those, and I will compare the starting number and the end result, how many came through, and I will get a number for that, and that's the 30 retention for today. And I will do it each day, get a different number because it's a different chunk of people, and then I will just can compare how my 30-day retention number changes from day to day. And so why is 30 days? It's just something that people, it's convenient to pick one day and compare that, because then you can see how the game, after half a year, how does your 30-day retention look like compared to the starting values, let's say, or how does your game's 30-day retention compare to my game, or whatever. But these are just arbitrary data points, nothing else. What is good? It depends on the game, of course. But so this is one, it's just drawn. It's not real data. It's just done with mathematics, I think. So, or some other plotting program. So just show you how it could look like a retention number. So this starts from the 40% and goes to 20 something in the 7th day. So I guess this could be from some game. It's not really isn't, but it's just this is how they kind of look like. So usually the first day drop is quite big, because many of those who start the application, they don't come back next day because they just find that, okay, it doesn't fit their play start, they don't like the graphics, whatever. But those who play it kind of come back to the game, and the chance that it's it always goes down, because there's less chance that the guy starts or the girl starts the game on 5th day than on 4th day, let's say. So on average. Of course, there's some changes, but this is always on average. But yeah, what's good number? There's no one answer to this. But if you can get 1 day retention something to 40%, I think that's quite good. And 7-day retention should be probably more than 20. Just what these are now. People have different opinions about this. What is good? Yes. No comments. No comments. No comments. I don't comment those numbers. But yes. Sorry? Not yet. No. Just kidding. Okay. Okay. But yeah, maybe something about retention still. It's of course, if you think about LTV now, you can improve the LTV by improving the retention, of course. So making the game better, making people come back to the game, will make this curve go higher, and because it's a multiplication with the how much money they spend each day on average, you can that way also increase your LTV. And but people shouldn't look this and the ARPDAU, which is kind of the monetization metric, too much as a separate things, because they are kind of tied together. Sometimes you can hear about these very high ARPDAU games, and And what's one of the real reasons is that they have such a bad retention. So let's say you have this good filtering system that lets everybody else but really the most hardcore gamers to the game. And they are very invested because they can go through the tutorial, right? It's so crappy tutorial that only the most invested game players can go through it. And of course then you can get this high average revenue per user because those users are not like your average user. Those are really like special guys who have made it through. So these can make these look numbers strange and good or whatever. So these are retention and ARPDAU is something that always should like inspect it together. It doesn't make sense to just talk about the other. Okay, but I think like in the modern world, like the basic idea how to launch a game or how to make a game is just make this minimum viable product and use these metrics now to see if the basic idea works and then improve it. Okay, minimum viable, or maybe the minimum should be taken about, but viable product. But kind of like get to some data as well, because it's kind of hard to know like how much, even though if you make a good game, you also have to get the monetization right. And that's very difficult to test or assume without having real data. And if you're planning to make a game, I would suggest like quite fast to get some reaction from your friends, whatever, but also put it out like as a beta or whatever test version and find out yourself like what are the numbers. Yes?
I do kind of shed a little bit understanding that how much has Heyday and Clash of Clans been changed since they launched, or any average game?
Okay.
And
Yes.
how much they might be making would just be that one.
Okay, so how much have Clash of Clans and Heyday or some other games changed, and how much they would make money now compared to what they are now? There's no way to like answer to this case. I cannot, and I don't know even like, because it's not just like how the games change, it's also like the audience change all the time, right? You get new kind of users, and some of the early adapters, they are better as a user, and you cannot really separate those two things that well. And it's very difficult to kind of make any exact statements. But of course it's so that you try to make them better and better, like, but yeah. So how did we define the audience, or did we think about it too much? How accurately we? Well, of course, I think it's more important when you just think about like the package. You kind of like have to have some idea like who is your audience where you're making the game. But I don't really think that making this. Of course, there's always this that you have to think that there's an audience, and maybe you do some market research even. I'm not saying we did, but maybe in some cases it could be worthwhile to check this kind of like think about the competitors. Are there any doing these kind of games? Of course, those are things you have to take into consideration, but not like I think it's more about just that you want to make the package feel right for the audience. So you have to think about it, not like make these strict definitions. We are not doing for these guys, but just like the team and everything works together. And I think that's just like it's very important part, but you shouldn't think it too much.
How did you define the audience? So you said that you need to make the package right for the audience.
Yes.
I guess the question was more, how did you define the first audience? You know, it was like for women between 30 and 35. I don't know.
Yes. So how did we define the audience? Yes, I guess it could be something. I guess you can think that.
Or you base it on the metrics.
You mean that? Maybe I'm not really understand what kind of answer you want to get from me, because, yeah.
I think one of the points is that sometimes if you're designing a product, you might have the real product there, but you have to arrive at the wrong customer segment. I don't know how much this happens in games that you package it for a wrong audience and then you figure out that okay, it's actually kids or it's not kids.
Okay. Yeah, maybe I.
So do you have any information if you launch a mobile product? Do you get any metrics of the profile of the players so that maybe you can adjust that hey, because of those ones playing this game that we thought.
Okay. Yes. So I guess now the question is more like is like if you make this definition that who's your target audience, and if it doesn't fit, or can we measure, does it fit the target audience that we kind of chose, basically, and is there a way to change it if it doesn't fit it, and stuff like that. I think like game development is just a complicated thing to get it. You really, of course, you can analyze different market, like different audiences. Let's say there's a way to get information from some, like, what are they age, and are they female or male, and how they are performing. But even if you get that kind of data and then you analyze it, what would you then do differently? You have the game already, you have to, maybe you can change some art or something like that, but it's very tricky to do big changes, and like, to me it doesn't feel that worthwhile. It's in some rare cases maybe there's some things that you can do, but yeah, usually it doesn't work out. Yes.
And what do you, how would you define this minimum viable product or viable product? When should you launch?
Yeah. Okay. So how should you define the minimum viable product? It's a good question. Yeah. I think it depends on each case. But maybe the main point is that you shouldn't sit on it too much. Kind of like at some point, it's when you have something that you think is kind of like a package that works, and has all the pieces you want to kind of test out. Then, like, faster you get some feedback on it, like qualitative feedback, then better, or quantitative feedback. And but there's no like what's the line. It depends all the time. But it's kind of like but I think the more important is that in the old way, or the old tradition of developing games, it's kind of like you have to get it ready, and everything has to be done when you do the launch, right? Because that's the big thing. Then you do the marketing. There's no way going to back and change the product. But with like a new world, it's that when you release it, you can just release it very slowly, kind of like. You don't because you can control how many people basically you get to play the game, how much ads do you run. Of course, if you get a good feature, and you will get a lot of people playing it and stuff like that, but still kind of like you have some control how many people will find it. You can choose some regions that you will only launch a game in this region of the world and get some controlled number of players playing the game. It wasn't possible before because you made these big launches and the marketing effort, marketing push was so important. But now it's more that like there's a constant flux of players to your game, and then if you have small flux in the beginning, you can kind of see how they behave and make the game better. And once you feel confident, now it's starting to look better, then you can open the channels and get more people to play your game. And but it's constant, even in the case that it's really like a global. Then after even that, you still tune it and make it better, bring new content. And because these games are endless, right? They're supposed to be endless, basically. So when people play something endlessly, they will run out of things. So it's just you have to think it as a service. Yes.
So what do you want to improve with Boom Big Chat?
No comment. Yes.
So how much or how big or fundamental changes can you make after you launch, or when you just decide to drop it?
How big changes you can do after a launch, or when you decide to drop it? Yeah, again, there's no one answer to this. I think it's game-specific thing. So you have to think about it. Usually, I think if something doesn't work out, you can see it quite fast. And if to go back and change something, I haven't heard any good examples where this would have happened. Like the first metrics look bad, and then they do something magic, and then it works out magically. Usually, it doesn't work out. If it doesn't work in the first, then screw it. That would be my tip. So, but that's a good thing. Wow, then you get feedback. You don't have to do that development work for 3 years and then find out that it didn't work. You can do it much faster and see, oh man, it didn't work. Well, let's do another. Right. Yes.
So how long would it take for a development team to get from idea to soft launch? Ideally?
Well, I think it should be done in 6 months. That's about the speed we did with Heyday. Maybe a bit longer, but something like that. But of course, when the games come bigger, like they already have come, are now a bit bigger than maybe they were a few years ago. So it can take a bit more than that, right? So, but year maybe, I don't know, less than a year. I think that's a good target to get it in less than a year. But it depends on the game size. Of course, to make really small arcade puzzle game or something like a Endless Runner or whatever, I think you can make those much faster even. But if it's a big game, then it will take some time, for sure. But I think games are getting bigger all the time, so yes.
Do you actually change the mechanics for monetization after testing for them? I mean, for example, in Heyday, have you tried something and then you haven't had good results and you take it out of the game and try something else?
You mean like have we removed some features after testing?
Yeah, monetization features.
Okay, yes. Have we tested some monetization features that we have removed from the game? I try to remember. No, no. I don't think actually that has happened, at least that much. Yeah, I don't remember even. But usually I don't like to, at least in Boom Beach we haven't so far, and like want to think about that we have some monetization features that we are bringing. Like this is a monetization feature. If you can avoid that kind of thinking, I think it's a. Of course, you can think about it that way, like and think. But still, if you don't have to think, okay, we have this game and let's bring this monetization feature. I think that's already a bit like from the wrong right directions, because that will kind of like assume that the basic game doesn't have any monetization, but you have this feature that monetizes. But it's kind of the game is just a bunch of features, right? So, but yeah, yes.
Is there some kind of analysis about player behavior, and that's like a behavior that most likely leads to purchase or something like that? Do you know if the company has done that?
Yeah, so is there some survey or something like these psychological things that will tell you like if you do something, will it make you purchase or stuff like that, right? That's your question, basically. Yes. There has of course have been some surveys, I think, but again, I would say, and I know there are some like now at the moment actually some studies working on that too, and I think there has some work done. But also, of course, they are always so game specific. So like making any big statements or big like learnings from them, it's very difficult because every game is a different thing, and kind of like even if you can figure out this kind of patterns, like I guess yes, I don't have any like at least knowledge. I don't personally like to too much think about those things, like going too much like how much those because then like have you played the new Angry Birds? Like, or the old Angry Birds. I think like that's a good example of that. Okay, now I criticize something. I should never do it. But yeah, maybe I. But it's kind of like if you think about it, like adding these features that bring money, kind of like as monetization features. It's very tricky to do right, because if it doesn't really fit the model like in the beginning, they just feel like pasted on things that hinder the gameplay, hinder the feelings, and like make it more difficult to play the actual game. So that's why it's so important, I think, to put it like integrate it to the game in the very beginning. And yeah, but I forgot what was my point regarding the yes, your question, but maybe anyways, yes. Yeah.
So, what are the? Don't ask the values, but how do you see? I guess you're using the metrics that you showed us before.
Yes.
To make the decision.
Yeah.
So, how do you make the decision? Is there some specific values you're looking for, or just retentions, or?
Yes. So, how to make the decision when you can go? Like, is your game performing well enough to go global? That's the question, right? What are the metrics you should look?
Also considering if I can launch, for example, I don't know, Canada or something.
Yes.
Why that market? Considering the Asians behave much more differently than Europeans or Americans.
Yeah. Okay. There are many reasons why Canada is usually done well. That's a beta testing playground, and one of them is, of course, that it's so close to the US market, which is the biggest market, or one of not anymore. I think Japan is now bigger, but one of the biggest ones. And so it's kind of good testing ground. And also, yeah, well, and it's English. You don't have to do any localizations. I think those are the biggest things by there. But when do you know it's good enough? Of course, the retention and ARPDAU, like how much each player monetizes on average. Those are for teams. Those are important because those are so easy to follow and see the numbers. Are these close to the targets we wanted or whatever? But of course, the LTV is again the whole thing. Like those will tell you if you have a good LTV or not indirectly. But of course, the LTV is now again the whole thing because it comes point to point. Like is the player valuable enough so that you can make those advertisements and stuff like that. You can really get players.
Yes, at least 1 month.
Yeah, sorry?
It has to be at least for 1 month.
Well, it should be endlessly, but of course you kind of have to make the estimate at some point that, okay, this is the pattern that we will follow. And it's always about estimations. There's no like, this is the LTV or anything like that. Yes.
Your estimate says that your LTV will be, or is something like 90% of CPI. Is that enough to go forward and you think that okay, you can make it better by just fine-tuning the game, or should it be something like 2 or? Can it be less than the CPI and then you can still be?
Yeah, it can. So how much better the LTV should be, or can it be worse than the CPI in order to go global? I mean, those are of course strategical decisions that each company or each people doing have to think about by themselves. There's no one answer to that one as well. Of course, you can get free players as well. For each advertised player, each player, they will spread the word. You have the K factor, virality, you have the different channels how you can bring people. So it's not so simple as I maybe put it there. And of course, it's also about resources. You have different companies, have different amount of people working on games, and they have to kind of think about like how to manage their resources. Is it worthwhile to put everybody in this game if it's doing so and so on? It's complicated thing. I wouldn't say that you have to make this much more than that one and to be like viable thing. It's tricky. But yeah, those are like strategical decisions. Of course, it's not really about the design anymore at that point. But why I wanted to bring it up is because I think like the design has to think about that. They have to understand that we have to get some LTV for this game in order to be like a global game, basically, or something that many people can find and play. Okay, I want to like close this part of the lecture by this reminder that free-to-play is in its early days and there's a lot of innovation to be done. So, like, because as I said, some of these models that have been used, like energy mechanic, whatever, they are like very specific. They work well in some games and don't work that well in other games. And that's why it's so problematic when every game is trying to force to that format, when they necessarily don't fit the format, or the format is like kind of like the execution is kind of not so well done. So I would kind of like try to encourage people also to innovate and find different directions how the free-to-play games can make money. There are many ways already like that exist, like let's say League of Legends, or sell skins, or well, I don't know, some other directions. But cosmetical things can also work out. But of course, if you think about this kind of app store ecosystem, it's because the LTV has to be so high if you want to make those advertisements. There are not that many actual like real candidates at the moment that will maybe work out, but hopefully more will be found. And I think there's this sad possibility that some game genres will actually fade away because the market changes and there is no sustainable realization of the genre in the ecosystem. Oh, that's long. But I think like some story games have a real problem in the future. They probably will always exist, but they will come more niche. And I think it's a shame, but there's like not that much that can be done, in my opinion, to that. Of course, these kind of projects, I hope people will do this kind of more artistic projects in the future, but they won't be like a commercial successes, not necessarily. Or maybe there will be a new channel that will open up a new way those games to exist. Like making games is all about like we are making games for these certain platforms, and when these platforms change, like the game has to change at the same time. or at least understand the change. Okay, I will close it with these 5 tips for making great free-to-play games. And this is actually, these are not direct. I think maybe the topics are actually direct, but there are some more tips in this book. But these are the same. These 5 tips are picked from the book, which I think are maybe the best tips. Maybe a bit modified, but basically. So Nicholas Lowell and Rob Fahey have wrote this Design Rules for Free-to-Play Games book, which actually I think is even free. You can download it from Kindle. Or maybe it costs something, but not that much. All right, I think the first one is very important. So you can think about the game as it consists of number of atoms. So atom is kind of like the smallest part of the game that you can imagine. It's kind of like the core loop, basically, of the game. Some small thing that the game consists. Not every game is like that, but many free-to-play games are like this, and maybe should be like this. At least good, successful free-to-play games. So there's like a small chunk that you can do. You can do it very little, or you can do it many times in a row. Like these are taken from his book. I think this example that Becheval Bliss has atom length of 1 minute, so you can play the one round last 1 minute. But still, like the average session length, how many times on average plays the game is 45 minutes. So it doesn't mean that the game, like the gameplay experience, needs to be short, even though the atom is very long. Starbuck test is another like a used one. So it's just you have to be able to play the game online when you're waiting to get your coffee done. It doesn't mean you have to play the whole game, but there has to be a meaningful decision done that you can do for the game. And I think very good way how this has been implemented is Puzzle and Dragons, which is now you can play it actually in Finland as well. I should encourage you to do it. It's a very good game. And it's just maybe the smallest meaningful atom I have found so far. And it's really that you can make this one puzzle move and then close the application. And that's a meaningful thing you can do. So you can actually, if you have a 5-second break, you can even do this meaningful choice and then instantly close it. And whenever you open it, it's in the same state and the game continues. So that's why actually Becheval Blitz is kind of a bad example, because there's a timer. The minimum length is 1 minute, but it had this nice statistics that I could use, so that's why I chose it. But actually, let's say Candy Crush, it doesn't have any timers, and I think that's one advancement that's been happening in those puzzle games, is that the modern games don't have timers anymore, because then you can scale the atom more meaningfully for different kind of players. So you can pick how much you want to play. And again, not every free-to-play game should be like this, but if you can have this kind of structure in the game, it's very good, because it makes it more accessible, more portable, more scalable. It's all about that players can find these meaningful moments where they can play the game. So this one kind of guarantees that there's always this kind of moment. Okay, any questions about the first tip? Okay, second tip, complexity in layers. So what it means that because the tutorial funnel or the start of the game is so important, you don't want to drop anyone from that at that point. It means that you can have complex free-to-play games, I think so. And maybe we probably will see it in the future as well, more and more. But I think those will come more in this way, that the complexity will be added on, after session after session after session. You will learn something more. So the initial state where the game starts is not so overwhelming. You learn this complexity bit by bit. That will help people won't drop out in the early game, and because also what's different in free-to-play game compared to this old-style game is that because the investment is so small when you don't pay anything, it's easy to drop out as well. So it's kind of like if you make the purchase decision, then you have already invested to the game. You have made some of course, installing free game is also like an investment, but this is bigger investment if you pay actually something. So that's why people also drop out so easily. They're just exploring and experiencing different things. Okay, never-ending gameplay. This already talked about a little bit. So this makes sense in the free-to-play game, and just because there's no point saying to the player, now you should stop. Okay, you have played my free-to-play game as long as I want, and now the game ends. It just doesn't fit that well the mentality of the free-to-play, because you want the players to be able to play as long as they want, and then you have more possibilities that they will pay and like your game. So usually you introduce this kind of like how this is usually structured is that you have a functioning atom, core loop, and the meta layer, meta progress in the game. And of course, there's always there's an incremental like increase in many things. At some point, it becomes too like problematic to make any meaningful progress, and that happens in some games. And usually, those games, the core loop, if it is good enough, it can like a surprisingly long. It can keep the game fun for the players. But at some point, usually, of course, people will stop playing. But it can be surprisingly long, like long times that people really like to play these games. Social elements add value. I'm not really like each free-to-play game should be social. I don't think so. I think there are very good examples of free-to-play games that are not social or that social. But I think it's of course a very big benefit if there's a social element, because especially those kind of elements that like clans or something like that, they create this new kind of like a social environment where people get to know each other. They get these online friends and interact each other. So they kind of like they have this net already in the game, and if they stop playing, they will lose all those people kind of. So that's really a big stickiness for the game if you have this kind of social layer. You don't want to lose those friends. But if you have never any gameplay, you have this kind of like a problem, like how you solve the content. So how do you bring enough content for the game? So there's a ways to do this. You can have AI created content, so the game generates the content for you, or other players create the content. There are different like I think there's been some interesting like progress on this front for some times already to how to solve these things. And sandboxes, of course, where it's kind of like a player-generated content, but players can do whatever. There's no real like goal even for the game necessarily. Those are like, are they games anymore? Of course, can be discussed and argued. But I think like this is the thing that most developers get wrong, is that they think about free-to-play and they all instantly start to like try thinking about how to squeeze the most money out of them like very fast. And I think like the game should be generous and let players play for free forever. And like there should be meaningful players for those free players to the end. There shouldn't be any paywalls. I think that's bad free-to-play design if you think that way. There's okay, fun ends here, now you pay or go out. It's just like the way I like to see it is there's this endless play that you can do, and then you can just like create possibilities for the fans of the game to spend and invest in it. And those will bring you the money. Those are kind of the super fans, whatever you want to call them. And but it should be scaled so that some players who play the game and really like it, he can make a meaningful purchase, just a little one. Maybe he thinks that he will also support the developer and he likes it. Okay, I'm ready to actually give some money for it. And then there has to be this kind of meaningful place where to place it, put the money. But it shouldn't be like forcing players to pay. I think there's nothing bad. It's a very nice feature of free-to-play that people can actually play those games for free. And that's something we should try to like stick to it and keep it alive. Not think, oh, it's a free game, oh, I don't want to download it. It should be, okay, it's a free game, cool, I can play it for free, right? And this is maybe the thing that is the biggest change from like a developer perspective if you do a free-to-play game, and that is a service and not like a finished product. So it's not enough that you create and ship a game. It's never fully ready in the free-to-play world. You interact with players, listen to feedbacks, improve it, even though it's been launched. So, but it's good. You can experiment, learn, improve, cut some things that didn't work, release alpha, beta, global. So this is, I think it has, of course, you are like married to the game for a longer time. It's sometimes fun to do different things, and if you do a free-to-play game, it easily happens that you need to be in the game for a longer time, even though if you want to do something else. So that's something, if you are doing your first free-to-play game, you should think like closely, like what's the game I want to work with for a long time, right? Because if it's successful, you should be working with it for a long time. Okay, that's all. Thank you, and game on.